meeting of the Hand-Eye Supply Curiosity Club. We're your hosts this evening. I'm Tobias and this is Will. Together we have a number of curious and exciting topics to share with you.
As attendees of the Hand-Eye Supply Curiosity Club, you are all now members, provided you adhere to our philosophy.
Ex Curiositas Scientia.
We pledge to learn without prejudice in pursuit of our mutual goal, perpetual noviceship. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually curious and perpetually novice.
This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truths understood. It awakens and excites us and makes us hungry for more. Curiosity Club is made merrier by our fellow artisans at Fort George Brewery in Astoria, Oregon. Today, we are going to have the presentation and Q&A until 7 p.m., and then we ask you to join us for reception and book signing party in the store with some treats from Pacific Pico and more beers from Fort George. Now let's give a warm Curiosity Club welcome to Ayse Birsel.
Great. Thank you. That was a very warm welcome, Tobias and Will. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, am I the curiosity of the night? I must be. So, welcome everyone. Hello. It's my great privilege to be with you tonight, and I want to thank everyone for coming, for making time, and I want to also thank my friend Laurence. I don't see you. Where is she? She's right in front. I need to see her. I need to see you. All right. For making this evening possible, and Eric as well. And all right, let's get started. But first, this is the camera. No, I need to speak to my family. Bibi, Awa, thank you for watching. That's my home. So my two fans are there. All right. So tonight I wanted to share with you the story of Design the Life You Love, this book that I just wrote in 10-Speed Press, published, I think, just like 3-4 weeks ago. So it's brand new. Yeah, it's a newborn. So let's start at the beginning. So I grew up in Turkey, in Izmir, and I come from a family of lawyers, so I was thinking I'll become a lawyer. But I loved drawing, so one day I switched and thought, I'm going to become an architect. I've never heard those two words together before. And he said, look, and using a teacup similar to this one, he said, see how the edge is kind of curved? It's so that it can fit your lips better. And then it has a handle. It's so that you can hold the hot liquid in your hands without burning yourself. And then if you spill some, that's why the saucer is there, so that, you know, even if you spill, you don't ruin your mother's tablecloth. And at that moment, I fell in love with the human scale of industrial design. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. And so that led me. I did my undergraduate in Turkey, in Ankara, and then came to Pratt Institute to do my master's. And the first day of class, first hour, our professor asked us something that I'm going to today ask you. And this is what he said. He said, turn to each other and draw each other. So you're probably all sitting on this piece of paper that's now nicely warmed up, that has the outline of a face. So I'm going to ask you, in 3 minutes, draw your neighbor. There's a little trick to drawing someone, and that's that the eyes go in the middle. Everything else, you can wing it. No masterpieces, and please look at each other every now and then, okay? So, let's go. Yeah, 3 minutes, so. You're gonna take turns?
Yes.
All right, so it's gonna be a minute and a half.
Okay.
It makes it harder. You end up with Picasso.
Cool. Yeah, Picasso is good. Last time I heard, he was quite successful. Yeah. Cool. Now, if you're not drawing, you're in trouble. This group here, what's going on?
No pens. We'll
No pens. Oh my God. Pens. Who has pens? See, I don't take no for one pen. Okay, at least 2 people can draw now. Drawing is good for you. Come on. Wow, beautiful. Oh my God. No masterpieces. What did you do? There are plenty of beautiful drawings here. On time, because I have so many things to tell you. All right, 30 seconds. Well done, well done. I like that.
You're being generous, but thank you.
No, seriously. Oh, and if you're done, you might want to sign like an artist, right?
Sure.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're done. All right. How was that? I think everybody's warmed up now. May I have your attention, please? Would you like to hold up your drawings so that I could take a group picture? Hold them high. I'm going to go.
I'm going to turn on the lights for you.
All right, hold on. I want to. It's large, so I'm going to do a panoramic. So don't move, because otherwise you're going to look very funny. Exactly. Yay. Thank you. Wonderful. All right, so do you feel like your right brains have warmed up? Sure. Yes. All right. And I didn't tell you, there's a little magic to this exercise. By the way, beautiful drawings. But the magic to the exercise is when I did it, so Ayse Birsel from Izmir, Turkey, her first week in New York. And next to me was Rodolfo Sanchez from Argentina, his first week in New York. And we drew each other. And to this day, he's one of my friends. So now you might become best friends with the person that you just drew. That's the magic of the exercise. So, and then after that, I started designing products, and to this products, things like toilet seats, especially one that's easy to clean where you can snap off the lid in the seat. First project with came out of school, and Bruce Hanna, who was the chair and my teacher, asked me if I'd like to work on this project. And 9 potato peeler. I heard it's the best, one of the best potato peelers on the market. And pots and pans to go with it. The Resolve office system for Herman Miller. And even automobiles. And that actually is the beginning of our story, because in 2001, I started working on an automobile project, a concept interior for Renault, the French automobile manufacturer. And they called me up and they said, Ayse, we're going to send you one of our best designers and you're going to love him. And then they apparently told Birsel Seck, you're going to love her. So then when we met, we did as we were in quick succession. Birsel moved from Paris to New York with his teenager son. We decided to become partners, so we started Birsel plus Seck together. We moved our office to a penthouse office, and we even had to find a new apartment that was large enough to hold our now large family. It was designing itself, and I was really happy. And Bibi and I were working like crazy and parenting full-time until the economy crashed. Dun-dun. The economy crashed, and when Bibi and I had started working together, we had kind of joked about putting all our eggs in one basket. Clients took their work in-house. We were an easy line item for them to cross and save money. And suddenly we found ourselves with no projects and no clients. And this was not something that I was used to. And so I looked for work, for new clients, and I came out empty-handed. So I thought, okay, well, fine, I'll look for a job. So I called up some headhunters, and some of them I knew well, and they took one look at me, and they basically said, Ayse, you're unhireable. And you have to understand, I started my office almost coming out of school. I never had a job, never had a boss, never had a performance review. So from their perspective, they didn't know what to do with me. Hence, I was unhireable. And I didn't know what to do with what they were telling me. These are people whose jobs are to find other people jobs, and they couldn't help me, and that was really harsh. So I remember going back home and thinking to myself, questioning everything that I had done up until that moment, and thinking, why did I ever start my own studio? What was I thinking? And why did I get Bibi involved in this crazy idea? He had a great job in Paris. And plus, why didn't we stay in Paris? Because things are free in Paris. Childcare, healthcare, education. So, and then of course I had to ask myself, why didn't I become a lawyer? And I didn't quite know what to do with myself. And Leah Kaplan, who's one of my closest collaborators, we joke about working together since we were kids. She could see that I didn't know what to do with all the time I had and kind of where to go. And she came in one day and she said, Ayse, look, you have all this time in your hands. So why don't you use this time to think about how you think? Because you think differently. And let me tell you, I hung on to those words like a lifeline, and I thought, she values how I think. So I'm going to do this. And I decided that I was going to kind of sketch and map out how I think. And it's really an interesting process of like going into yourself and trying to figure out what happens when you're creating something. How do you go from one point to the other? And what are the kind of the breakthroughs that happen? So out of that, I came out with my design process, deconstruction, reconstruction. And then two things happened. One was GE called. And they said, come and talk to us. And I was so happy to go see them. And I showed them my work. But at the end, for the first time, I also had the new process, how we think. At the end of the presentation, they kind of looked at me a little bit like awkward, and they said, Ayse, we hope you won't be offended, but we're not going to ask you to design anything. And I was like, no. And, but they said, we're really interested in your process, deconstruction, reconstruction. And with that, they gave us our first project in a long time. They asked us to deconstruct and reconstruct value of design across 5 of their businesses. And that was kind of the turning point, kind of the starting to climb back up again. The other thing that happened was Shirley Moulton called. And Shirley is an old friend, and we used to belong to this organization, Women Presidents Organization, where as presidents of our companies, we would get together and mentor each other and help each other. And Shirley, you know, she was calling to see what it was I was up to and kind of like to catch up. And so we started talking, and she said to me, do you remember that one time we were asked to come up with our kind of mission statement in one sentence, and you had said, my mission is to design the life I love. I had completely forgotten this. And she said, how can you forget that? I've never forgotten it. And I know none of the women in that group ever forgot that you said that. And that was kind of like, you know, sometimes you say things and they stick to you, you say them in the moment. It was kind of one of those things. And I thought, it's true that I want to design my life and that my life is my biggest project. And now I have a design process. So can I apply my design process to my life? And Shirley actually had just started Academy of Life about lessons we don't learn at school. So she said, that sounds really interesting. You want to do a workshop? And by that moment, I had learned to say yes to everything. So I said, yes, Shirley. And with that, I put together a workshop, Design the Life You Love. And I created it from scratch, made up the exercises. And I was my first student. I had to kind of do my exercises to see if they worked. And then one day I found myself in front of 15 people like yourselves, people who have interesting jobs, families, parents, and they were interested in designing their lives. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, I'm a product designer. The meetings I go to are about products, budgets, constraints, you know, engineering questions. And here I was with a group of people who were looking to me to learn about designing their lives. And I remember thinking, Ayse, do you know what you're doing? You know, can you really lead them to something meaningful? And that was 5 years ago. I've since then and have met some incredibly wonderful people. And what I've learned through them, because when you teach, you learn. You know, that's the trick. I learned that ordinary people, and that's what I call non-designers affectionately, most people who come to the workshops are non-designers who are at the turning points next, creatively and with optimism. And these ordinary people are extraordinarily creative when they're given a process and set of tools. And so now I get emails from people and notes, and sometimes I'll run into them on the street, and they'll say, Ayse, your workshop has changed my life. And they say things like, you know, because of you or because of your workshop, I went back to school and I'm getting my MBA. Or now I empathize with my mom and I understand her better. Or things like I quit my job, or I started the company I wanted to start for all these years. And my favorite is, there was the head of innovation from P&G who came to one of the workshops. And then afterwards he emailed me and he said, I went back home, I taught the process to my wife, and now we design our lives together every Sunday. It's, you know, nobody has stopped me on the street and said, your potato peeler has changed my life. And I realized that, when I was growing up in Turkey, there was a roadmap. There was kind of set of rules for how to have a good life. And same thing for Bibi when he was growing up in Paris and then in Senegal. There was like a roadmap that our parents taught us. And you know the roadmap. You go to school, and then maybe if you can do your master's, that's even better. You get a job, you work hard, you get married, you have kids. That's, that was the good life. There are no roadmaps today. Things have changed so quickly. I don't know. I don't know what to tell my kids, what they need to do to have a good life. And like all things in design, that's an incredible challenge, but it's also a wonderful opportunity, because if there are no roadmaps and no rules, we can make our own, right? And we can create an original life, a life that looks like us, feels like us, smells like us, something that's unique to us. And so I realized that that's what I could teach my kids. I could teach them that they could design their lives. I can teach you, and then you can teach somebody else. And so that's the story of Design the Life You Love. So if you'd like, I'd like to take a couple more minutes and just show you or share with you kind of the book. Would you like that? Yes. Yes. So here's the book. And my friend Austin there, you were asking me how long this took?
Well, how you wrote it, like the process of writing.
All right, so the process of writing. First of all, this book took me 3 years. And the process of writing was that word writing already. I tried to write it. And I have a draft in Word that is so boring that I haven't read. I talk. And third time, Leah was like, look, you think by drawing. Why don't you draw? And that was kind of, it seems obvious, right? But it's not, it wasn't obvious to me. And so she even kind of got me books that were very illustrative, and one of them, What I Need, this kind of book. So then I started drawing, and once I started drawing, I found my voice. And so we did kind of like a 10, 15 drawing. I would draw and then I would write. We found that voice. And then once I found that, it was, the rest kind of flowed after that. So Design the Life You Love. As you can see, no prior creative experience necessary. And this was really important for people who see this book and feel like if they want to design their life, they can do this. And it's an interactive book, and it's based on my process. This is the process we use with all our clients. It's the red thread across all our projects. And you know what's interesting about life? We all have one. So it's this shared project that gives me a chance to show you how to use a design process. And the process has 4 steps. So deconstruction is taking something apart to see what it's made up of. Point of view is then looking at those pieces and thinking about them differently. Reconstruction is putting it together, back together, knowing that you can't have everything. And then expression is giving it form. So based on that kind of the bare bones of reconstruction, giving form to the idea. But the thinking for this is thinking like a designer. Because first of all, we as designers are optimists. For some reason, we always think that we're going to come up with a better solution, no matter how hard the problem, and that drives our passion. So optimism is key. Holistic thinking, so seeing the big picture, having empathy, and in this case, when you're designing your life, having empathy for yourself for once, and then asking what-if questions, so opening yourself to possibilities, and then collaboration. And even though you're designing your life there are other people in that life. So eventually you enlist them in your design. So the warm-up, we all already did the warm-up. So you're ahead of the game. The warm-up is drawing. I always try to begin a creative session by drawing. And it doesn't matter how you draw. It's just meditative, and it kind of tells your brain, hey, we're creating. We're thinking creatively now. And these are my 2 kids. If you want to draw your kids, just give them an iPhone or an iPad. Then because then they stay still. And people, family, friends. Or some black camera. It looks like this compact thing, and then if you deconstruct it, there are all these parts in it. Can you put it back together again? Did anybody say yes?
Some engineers.
Some engineers. The idea is, for most of us, when we deconstruct something, we can't put it back the way it was before. And so that's the magic, the beauty of deconstruction, is that as soon as you pull it apart, you start thinking differently about it. Thank you, Laurence. And in the book and in my workshops, I joke about, half seriously, that if you have the perfect life, don't deconstruct it. So then, as your point of view changes, you start to see things differently, and maybe from new angles, you can create new value. And that's really the heart of creativity. People we know. So inspiration is a key part of creative thinking. And when we're designing our lives, that inspiration often comes from other people. So I want to ask you who your heroes are. Think of one hero. And what I mean by hero, these are not superheroes, but people who interest you because they have something that inspire you, and maybe some qualities that you would like to have. And so write their name, do one icon, like a symbol for them, and write some of their qualities, 2, 3 qualities. And let's take, again, 3 minutes. So, we don't have a lot of time. But just kind of humor me and put down one, maybe somebody you know, or somebody you know of, somebody who might be a scientist, an architect, a musician, a housewife. Go for it. Let's see. Good.
I have to tell you something. I went online and I saw your YouTube and I thought it was amazing. It was so awesome. to see
Thank
your
you.
family.
Was that the Fast Company one?
I think so.
Thank you.
It was awesome. They
Thank
brought me here today.
I love that. I'm going to move all of you to the front.
I was always the rebellious one.
I can see that. I have a group here that's like no pen to paper. It's like, you come to the front. Cool. Everybody has an icon, some qualities, a person. It can be a pet also. They're heroic. Oh, that's super. Are we good? Let's see. Sorry. Let's see. All right. Now I just wanted to find my notes because would you like to share? May I have one hero, a volunteer to share their heroes? Thank you.
Do you want the name?
Name, please, and qualities. And then maybe you could show the icon.
My friend's name is Brooke. Just had lunch with her. And the top three are optimistic, hardworking, and tackles challenges.
Optimistic, hardworking, tackles challenges.
Yes.
What do you do as a symbol for her?
Pretty simple, just a smile with 2 arrows.
Oh, that's cool. Optimistic. Thank you. Another hero? Yes, please.
Oh, I surprised myself. I decided to be my own hero.
All right.
I have so many, but the truth is that I'm my own hero because this is my life. And I'm inquisitive, adventurous, empathetic, generous, and a risk taker. And my symbol, though it came out kind of bad, is like a flower child. Kind of represents a lot of where I think I did my formation in my early life through my sister and brother who were a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people in the world that I admire, but it does me more good to look inside.
I love it. So inclusive, risk taker.
Yeah, inquisitive, adventurous, empathetic, generous, and risk taker.
Wonderful. One more? Yes. All right.
So I chose Eugenia Clark, and she was my favorite ichthyologist growing up. And she was this real badass scientist where she really challenged the notions that sharks have to swim while they're sleeping. And she had this curiosity around the idea of, given the idea of what the assumption was of the mechanics of a shark, the behavior was already sort of like predestined by other scientists. She's like, we actually have to see how it works. So she was able to get into like these underwater caves and study sleeping sharks. And she got some of the first footage of like sharks hatching. And she was really brave. And there's a great National Geographic documentary where you can see her fend off a feisty bull shark with a clipboard. And that is really brave. And that's pretty cool to look up to when you're 7.
I love it. Now I have a new hero. All right. One more, maybe?
The one I'm thinking of is Keitra Dixon.
Sorry, say again.
Her name is Keitra Dixon.
Keitra Dixon, okay.
She's a designer I met last year, and she kind of has the life that I always wanted. She grew up in rural Alaska and then moved and worked in like LA and New York and did all this, kind of design networking, did all these jobs. But then she managed to kind of like work it so that she and her husband moved back to rural Alaska last year in the middle of nowhere. And then like in no way did it slow her down. Like the first one she produced was these crayons, which like I think Momo wants to pick up now. They're just like wax cast off. So it's just gonna be a perfect example of someone like doing what I want to do, like going from rural city and then like escaping that.
And her qualities then are?
I think she's just one of those people that's limitless.
Limitless.
Like, she didn't see moving back to like the middle of nowhere in Alaska as like a hurdle in her career at all.
Great.
Just
She doesn't
didn't slow
see
down.
constraints, basically. Perfect. Thank you. All right. If we had time, this is my favorite part. I would want to listen to everyone's heroes and be inspired. But just for time's sake, I want to tell you, first of all, thank you very much for going along with it. But now, just cross out your heroes' names and put your own name down. Except for you, because you already figured it out. Seriously, because, I don't know you, but, Brooke, the optimism and hardworking and tackling challenges, I'm sure that those are your qualities. Well, you already are, like I said, inquisitive, risk-taker, adventurer, empathic. But I can't see you, but this idea of curiosity, badass scientist who's not going to stop at other people's preconceptions of things and is going to find out for herself, that's you. And then this limitless person who doesn't recognize constraints, that's you. Because the things that we recognize in our heroes are the qualities that we have, and that's why we see them. We're interested in those qualities, and we want to have more of them. These are really our values. And in design, values are what helps us sustain the process. That's kind of foundation. And same thing with our life. And if I were to ask you what your values are, it's a hard question. If you ask me, I wouldn't know what to say. But that's the beauty of inspiration. When you think about it from the perspective of other people, it becomes so much richer. But at the end, you can say, yes, those are my values. And that will help me reconstruct my life and kind of understand what I love and make it original to me. So I have to tell you, though, that I did this with a group, like I think similar to this group, like 100 people in a beautiful auditorium once. And I said, cross out your heroes' names and put your name down. And there was this beautiful woman in the audience, and her hands shot up in the air, and she said, I can't. I have to tell you, when you're on stage, and kind of all the lights are on you, you don't want to hear anybody tell you, I can't, or no, or yeah. So I was like, why? And she said, because I put God there. And I said, oh, well, okay, you don't cross out, but everybody else cross out. All right. So that's the heroes, and now another favorite design tool of mine is metaphors, and I learned this from working with Herman Miller. I'm not going to go into detail, you'll do this, but metaphors are wonderful because they help us think about complex things, difficult things in relation to things that we're familiar with. And so metaphors in the book help us visualize the life we love. And reconstruction is about making choices. So it's the other side of deconstruction. And frankly, if you deconstruct something, you need to reconstruct it too. Otherwise, it's very destructive. But reconstruction is also recognizing and realizing you need to make choices. We can't have everything. So these three circles represent that you need to make choices, and because we have limited time and resources, and we need to know how and where we want to invest our time and energy. So it's kind of this sharp convergence. And in the book, there are plenty of exercises from people who come to the workshops to so that people who are doing it anew can see that, oh, somebody else has done it. That gives me comfort, and this is how they thought about it, and now I can think about it myself. And the expression is then, if the reconstruction gives you kind of a very simple way of understanding the ingredients of your design, expression is about giving it form. And you can give it form by writing a letter to yourself or to a loved one. You can do a vision map. You can compose a poem. You can even write a mathematical formula for the life you love. But today I want to share with you, oh, and then you make 1 + 1 = something unique. And here's my vision map. to just show you how crazy you can think when you're designing your life. So my vision is to be the Katy Perry of Design the Life You Love. To understand this, you also need to understand that I have 2 daughters through the beauty of her music. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. So young people who have their whole life in front of them, that they can design their lives. But I also want to show people our age, parents, that we can redesign our lives. So I drew this on a big easel pad. Once I had this idea of Katy Perry, and no singing, I promise. And I thought, just like she does it, I want to do it with my friends and family. And so I put it on my wall, on our bedroom wall, actually. And you need to meet Bibi, my partner, but he's this big guy. And so I showed it to him, and he said, fine. We'll do the tour. And then, of course, I shared it with my kids. And so the thing with designing your life and then bringing in your collaborators is that the other day, one of my 10-year-old asked me, so, Mom, when are we going on tour? Well, this is kind of the beginning of the tour, so I'm, and this is my Madison Square Garden, right? And so then you live the life, and the 4 steps guide you, and you'll be surprised that they really guide you from one step to the other until you start to see your life differently and make choices. And then you go ahead and live the life you love. You prototype it, you model it, you test it, and then you tinker with it, and you're like, okay, this didn't quite work, so until you imagine the life you want to live, you live it. And that's the story of Design the Life You Love. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you elaborate on the process of the drawing and writing and the back and forth a little bit?
Yeah. Great. Drawing is a language, and so is writing, but there are 2 different languages, and sometimes it's so much easier to represent a complex idea through drawing and then write about what you've drawn. And sometimes you can write about something, and then when you try to draw what you wrote about, you learn new things. So it's that the power of using both languages together that's so important. And that's why in the book I try to constantly ask you, can you do an icon, a symbol? Or if you're doing your metaphor, draw your metaphor. Because if your metaphor is a tree, when you draw it, you might draw other trees around it, and suddenly you're thinking of that relationship between trees, and you might draw roots, and then you're thinking about, well, how does a tree grow? And you might not do those things if you just wrote tree. So it's really that idea of combining those things. I've learned through design, but I've also learned that everybody, I do this with so many people now, everybody can draw. You don't have to draw beautifully. Nobody's there to judge you. It's just you need to map out something. The other piece of it is that in design, why do we draw? We draw to visualize things. Because if you can visualize something, even in its roughest form, you're so much closer to making that a reality. Because design is about taking what we know today and imagining the future, right? And drawing is a great tool for that. So that's the emphasis on visualize your life. And then if you can visualize it, you can start to figure out how to make it happen. There was another hand, please.
Yeah, you actually answered some of what I was asking, but as a lifer, artist, creative, I don't draw very much unless I really have to. And I'm very self-critical of my drawing, but I like sculpting, 3D. Anyway, so I want to get your book, but I have a bunch of books on my shelf already, not quite like yours, but good books that are supposed to help me find the next step as I'm in my mid-50s and I'm always recreating. Is there one thing or two things you would say that how your book might be the different one? Because often I get into them and then I put them down, but there's something here I'm feeling, I just don't know what it is, that says that this is going to be the one that will take me to the next step. Is that?
All right, hold on one second. There are no hard questions. Come on. It's like I think that what makes this approach special is, I can go on and on. But one is really, all I'm doing is sharing with you my process. And it's a design process that I've tried again and again and found that it always leads to new avenues and kind of new creativity. But you do the work. So it's not about telling you what you need to do. It's about sharing with you how to think creatively. And it's with optimism because, again, life is a tough project. It's full of constraints and challenges and opposing wants and needs, constraints and, So in my mind, the only way to think about it is optimistically and playfully. So that's also really important. I talk about it in the beginning of the book, that when we're playing, we're like kids. We're not afraid of making mistakes. We try different things. And this book is really about that. Try it. It's just pen and paper. You don't like it? Open a new page and try it again until you start to feel like the best idea starts to rise to the top. And you're excited. When it happens, you're like, oh, now I want to do this. And if you want to do it, then you start telling other people. And then you bring them along. And so that, I think, is what this book is trying to do.
Optimistic and playful.
Optimistic and playful.
Thank you.
Sure. Good question.
Yeah, where do you struggle or fall down when you're trying to, or slack off when you're trying to redesign your life as your process?
For me, it's the most difficult thing is being my own teacher. It's easier for me to tell other people, and it's easier for other people to do it because somebody else is showing them how to do it. Doing it yourself is harder because this is my process, and it's kind of like what's the saying, the shoemaker's.
Cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yeah, that's kind of my challenge. So I know too much, in a way. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I still do it. I still do it often because I need to come up with examples. And when I do it, what I find that what it does help me a lot with is, and I didn't talk about this, it helps me build coherence, which again, what design is very much about. Like, how can I build coherence between my values, my actions, my choices? And if I know my reconstruction, that coherence becomes quite easy. And so when life kind of throws things at you, and I often kind of lose my mooring, and I'm like, I don't know why I was doing something. In those moments, I find that building that coherence is very helpful. and saying, hold on one second, these were my values, this is what I was trying to do, and I just need to keep on doing it. So sorry.
Sorry, just quickly, did you try this on your kids?
I should answer that question. So my daughter, who's now 11, came to my workshop as my assistant when she was 9. And so she did it with everybody else. And the other day, I found her notes. And Awa, I don't know if you're still listening, don't be upset. But her life design was, I do what my mom tells me to do. And I was like, oh, I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? She was 9, so yeah. I don't think she still thinks that. So, yeah. But my favorite audience is like high school kids and college kids because they're really starting fresh, and so that's kind of mostly the people who come to the workshops are older people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But I try to go to schools and kind of teach this to show, hey, why don't you design your life?
So you mentioned you learn the most when you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any one thing that stuck out the most to you or like affected you most through teaching something? Oh, that's really affecting me personally, and your personal life design.
In my personal life design? Or
just in general?
Yeah, in general. I mean, one of the things, there's so many things I learned, but one of the things that it really taught me was to simplify so that, you know, but over time I had to kind of simplify it and make it very apparent to people. And so that really taught me a lot of like, what's the best example to show this? Like the idea of the camera, you know, to show that that resonates with people, or the whole idea of like crossing out your hero. That I learned that from people because some of the people who came to the workshops early on were my friends. Right? What are you going to do? You call all your friends, like, I'm doing a workshop, are you coming? And they come, and then they were talking about their heroes, and I was like, but that's you. But that's you. And then, so then I started realizing, hold on one second. I didn't know that in the beginning, but then I was like, their inspiration is like, really looks like them. And so then I made this connection, and then the crossing out part was just to mark kind of that break. And so things like that have been, and it really has changed our point of view about what we do as in our studio. I am a product designer, and I think of myself as a product designer, but actually now I think of myself as a designer of life, because I realized that often as product designers and manufacturers of products, we think of this product, but from the user's perspective, they don't think of the product. The product is a prop in their lives. They have a life to live, and so and that maybe is the biggest learning. That totally changed our perspective, and now actually we work with people. We co-design with our clients, and we co-design with users, because we realize that, hey, if people can design their whole life, they can design a portion of their life. So what do they think about laundry? What do they think about healthcare? What do they think about mobility? And then it's just amazing, because they're incredibly creative. And just to give you a little example, like laundry, people don't think about the washing machine. They think about, how am I going to get help me get my kids to do laundry. Will you? It's like, that's interesting. And then they're like, all this good smell that comes, that's in the washing machine. Why can't I have that permeate the rest of my house? Or why can't I just wash one thing? Like I take off my clothes and then I wash them. So things like that. And it's so much richer than this box. So.
Pardon me if I missed it. I was like moving seats when you started talking about our heroes. Who are your heroes, or who did you cross off?
Yes, it's hold on. All right, Lawrence, the book, please. Thank you. Actually, I have a favorite hero. She's in the book, and I wanna. All right. This, can you see her? Beautiful woman, Rowena Reed Costello. Thank you. When I went to Pratt, she was my teacher, and we joke about like her age because she was 80 plus years old, but nobody quite knew how old she was. And she had developed a methodology to teach people, her students, how to think in 3 dimensions, like you would teach someone how to music through notes. She could teach us 3 dimensions, and she knew exactly what she was doing. She was very strong, very passionate, and we would go into her class and come out of it having learned how to master form in 3 dimensions. And one of the things that she taught us was, that's in the book, is a beautiful object, whether it's a product or sculpture or architecture, has a dominant element. It has a subdominant element, and it has a subordinate element. And if you can get these 3 things in tension, you can make something very interesting in 3 dimensions. And so that idea of dominant, subdominant, subordinate, those are the 3 circles actually. What's the dominant of your life, what's the subdominant, and what's the subordinate. So anyway, that's my hero. And then when I did the deconstruction, reconstruction, I thought to myself, I'm emulating Rowena, trying to figure out how do you create a process and then how do you teach it. So the 3 questions limit, okay?
Only 2. I thought it was funny that you.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yes.
So you mentioned intention, but I had a question about intention. That in process of deconstruction or the early phase of the design process, you pull everything apart, you examine it, and when you're reassembling, you're leaving things out. But it's not an accident. At that point, you're choosing things and you're intentional. Yes. So could you talk a little bit about that? Any aspect of that?
I'll talk about it in a roundabout way. Yeah. So when I was trying to explain reconstruction, for everything in the book, and actually before that, everything in the workshop, I needed examples outside of myself, outside, like things that people can understand. So to show that, like the camera is about deconstruction, there are other things in there that show how people can think differently. And reconstruction was a hard one. How do I explain reconstruction? And I didn't want to get into this whole, visual. Reading David Sedaris. If you haven't read David Sedaris, you need to read him, and I promise you'll break out laughing. I'd be on like buses and subways reading him, and I'd just like laugh my head off. And so at one point, I couldn't, there were no more books to read, so I started looking up his New Yorker articles, and one of his articles is Laugh Kookaburra Laugh, about his trips to Australia. And he talks about meeting this very successful woman who, they're kind of on a road trip together, and the woman explains to him that to be successful, that life is like, has 4 burners, like a stovetop metaphor. And it has 4 burners. one is family, the other is friends, the other is work, and the fourth one is health. If you want to be successful, she says, you need to turn one of the burners off. So you have to choose, which is like makes a lot of sense. If you want to be really, really successful, you need to turn off two. And so that is about reconstruction. You know, what are your choices? Because she's right. You know, so if either your health, you know, you have to neglect your health, or you neglect your family, or you know, or your friends. Except if you're designing your life, you can do some dichotomy resolution. So, and my trick for that is, I find that when I'm working very hard, I neglect my friends. And so I figured if I work with them, then I hang out with them. So that's a dichotomy resolution. Work with your friends and become friends with people you work with. And of course, my goal is to be really successful. I'm working with my family, and so I'm gonna, my kids don't know this, but I'm gonna enlist them in the work. So anyway, that's the...
I have a question.
Yes,
So
on page 62.
on page 62, so I'm familiar with your product design process, and so I'm kind of curious about the process of making this book and how it compares with designing the product and designing the book. So, like, for instance, what was your first physical prototype of this book, kind of picture a room full of sketches, and maybe they all came together physically for the first time?
So that's a great question, and only Laurence and I have worked together. So it's so I know you're coming at it from a very familiar place. And so
Can you repeat the question, please?
the question is, so how does this compare to like
Designing a product.
Yeah.
And about I wanted to hear the story of this, a first prototype of this book when it first physically came together.
So initially, the first prototype of the book was, I thought, I'll just have a sketchbook, and then I'll draw in it, and that will be the book. Like that will be the first kind of physical, every page, you know, I'll draw and write. I quickly learned that. Well, I started kind of like tearing out the pages because they weren't quite right, so that didn't work. But then I started drawing, and I would draw in my sketchbook and then clean it up, draw on kind of vellum paper. And so I ended up with like stacks of vellum paper. And then we quickly started putting that into Keynote and literally like designing the book. And one of my students, Rona Binay, she then laid it out in InDesign, and then she printed out, and we had the kind of the beginning of the book. So that was the physical expression. But I found that you know why I started writing a book is because people would come to the workshop and they'd be like, "Do you have a book? Are you working on a book?" And then at one point I found myself saying yes. I'm working on the book. And then I was like, oh, okay, well now I need to write the book. It's and then in terms of like pitching the book to publishers, you need to write a proposal. And that always puzzled me because I'm like, how can I propose something that I don't know? I don't know the book, you know. So then I think different from most people, and I think that's the designerly approach, like you have to mock it up. I mocked up the whole book, kind of very close to what it is, and then that's what we showed the publishers. And then I did the proposal after the fact of like, this book, you know, does this and this. Yeah. Are we done? Such a great audience. Thank you for not going with it.
So what you're saying is that your inspiration for the book was your audience?
Yes.
They were your inspirations to go ahead and make the book?
Yes. So, yes, my audience was my inspiration, and kind of the drive that they wanted to take something home. And I thought that I saw that almost like a responsibility, that if somebody wants to take something home, what can I give to them? And I thought it was going to be easy, frankly. I thought, I do a workshop, the workshop, everything is on slides, I'll just put those slides into something, we'll be done. And I wasn't done. Yeah. We're done? Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. First off, just want to let you know, we return Tuesday, November 24th with Thomas Barefoot of Barefoot Sound. Barefoot Sound was founded by scientist, engineer, and inventor Thomas Barefoot. He developed his first studio monitor in 2004, having only stepped into a professional recording studio a few times. The design standards he set for himself were mostly based on an idealized version of what studio monitor performance should be, rather than first-hand experience with many existing monitors. As it turned out, the speaker he built was not only extraordinarily innovative, it also surpassed the quality and performance of some of the world's most elite monitor brands. Having the confidence of his online compatriots, Thomas started receiving orders for his new creation, building each by hand in his garage in San Francisco. By 2006, the fledgling business had grown so much that Thomas left his job at Intel. Barefoot Sound stepped out of the garage and has been taking the recording industry by storm ever since. And they are made here expertly crafted in Portland, Oregon. And let's have another round of applause for Ayse. Please join us for book signing and beer and little pies from Pacific Pie Co. And a little bit more conversation in the store. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.